Fear has changed. It no longer hides in the dark, it whispers in daylight, crawls into your thoughts, and waits in silence. From cursed families and silent worlds to monsters that wear human faces. These films didn't just scare us, they reshaped what horror means. So, if you think you've seen it all, think again. Tonight, we'll walk through 10 modern nightmares that defined a new era of terror. Ready to face what's lurking beyond the screen? Let's begin. 1. Hereditary, 2018. A grieving family uncovers a chilling inheritance that binds them to something far darker than blood. Some horrors don't need to leap from the shadows, they simply wait. Hereditary doesn't terrify you through noise or shock, it does it with silence. With the weight of grief that hangs in the air like a curse. The story begins with the death of a grandmother. But her presence never really leaves. It lingers in the walls, in the air, in the faces of those left behind. Annie, the daughter, tries to understand her family's history through miniature art pieces, while her husband holds the crumbling pieces of sanity together. But grief, once awakened, spreads like fire, it consumes without mercy. From the moment the film begins, you feel it. That tension coiled beneath every quiet dinner, every whispered word. There's a sense that something unseen is pulling the strings, guiding each tragedy like a cruel puppeteer. The clicking sound from the daughter's mouth, the strange symbols etched into walls, the shadows moving when no one's there, every detail feels wrong. And yet perfectly placed. Director Ari Aster doesn't just tell a story about possession, he tells a story about inheritance. What do we truly inherit from our families? Their love, yes, but also their pain, their secrets, their madness. Hereditary makes you question how much of our lives are truly ours, and how much are shaped by those who came before. The film traps you inside the Graham family's spiral, making you feel every ounce of their despair until you're gasping for air. And then there's Toni Collette, delivering a performance so raw, so visceral, it feels almost intrusive to watch. Her screams cut through the quiet like a blade. Her grief feels too real, too human. You can't look away, even when you want to. That's the true terror of Hereditary. It doesn't let you hide. It drags you into its nightmare and forces you to confront what it means to lose control. To lose family, to lose yourself. By the end, as the final ritual unfolds under the flickering candlelight, everything becomes disturbingly clear. The horror was never random. It was destiny, crafted, passed down, inherited, and when the chanting rises and the truth takes shape, you realize it was never about escape. It was about acceptance of something ancient, something inevitable. When the screen fades to black, you sit there, frozen, listening to your own heartbeat. Hereditary doesn't end when the lights go out. It follows you home, whispers in your ear, and makes you wonder, what have you inherited that you can never escape? 2. Get Out, 2017. A young black man visits his white girlfriend's family estate, only to uncover a horrifying secret hiding behind their perfect smiles. There's something deeply wrong about politeness that feels rehearsed. From the very first moment Chris steps into that immaculate suburban house, you can sense it, the tension, the way silence lingers just a second too long, the smiles that seem a little too bright. Rosa's family is charming, cultured, and endlessly accommodating, but every word, every look, feels like it's coated in something slick and false. You want to believe it's all in his head. You want to trust the calm. But Get Out doesn't let you. It pulls you into that unease and dares you to sit still. Jordan Peele doesn't rely on cheap thrills or sudden jumps. He builds horror out of familiarity, turning everyday moments into traps. The dinner conversations about how they would have voted for Obama a third time. The hypnotic swirl of a teacup. The stiff smiles of the household staff who act both friendly and hollow. It all builds to a quiet, suffocating realization. You start to see what Chris can't quite admit. Something is wrong here. And it's watching him from behind those polite eyes. And then there's the sunken place. That moment when Chris is hypnotized, falling into an endless void, his body frozen while his consciousness screams in silence. It's not just a cinematic image. It's a metaphor for every voice that's been silenced, every identity taken, every scream ignored. It's horror that speaks to something real, something raw, something far beyond the screen. As the story unravels, the truth becomes unbearable. The family's kindness was never kindness, it was hunting. The body-snatching scheme they run isn't science fiction, it's a monstrous reflection of cultural appropriation, control, and exploitation. The horror doesn't come from monsters, it comes from the comfortable faces of privilege, smiling as they take what isn't theirs. And when Chris finally fights back, it's catharsis wrapped in chaos. The sound of violence becomes liberation. Every strike a reclaiming of his own body and soul. The house burns. The mask of civility melts. And for the first time, he breathes. You breathe with him. You realize that the real horror wasn't what they did. It was how easy it was to hide it behind charm, money, and manners. Get out is a scream disguised as a whisper. A mirror held up to modern society that asks, who's really in control? It leaves you staring at your own reflection, wondering what horrors you've been smiling politely through. And when it ends, you can't shake the thought, maybe the scariest monsters aren't in the dark. Maybe they're the ones who say, welcome, make yourself at home. 3. The Conjuring, 2013. When a family moves into their dream home, they awaken something ancient, and the nightmare refuses to leave. It always starts so simply, doesn't it? A quiet countryside house, a hopeful family, boxes still half unpacked. The Perrons just wanted a new beginning, a place to laugh and breathe again. But the house had other plans. Even before the first night ends, the air feels heavy, charged, like it's holding its breath. The kind of silence that doesn't feel empty, but crowded. The Conjuring doesn't rush into its terror. It lets you settle in first, makes you feel safe, then begins to whisper. A creaking floorboard, a clap in the dark, a shadow standing just outside the frame. And then, as the family starts to unravel, so do you. Because this isn't just a haunted house story, it's about the kind of evil that feeds on fear. The kind that waits until you believe in it. Ed and Lorraine Warren enter the story not as saviors, but as witnesses, two people who've seen the darkness wear too many faces. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga bring them to life with a quiet strength, making you believe that faith and fear can coexist. They walk through the Perron house with crosses and recording equipment, trying to understand what even God seems to have abandoned. But how do you fight something that was there before you ever arrived? Director James Wan crafts terror like an artist paints with shadows. Every frame is precise, every movement deliberate. The camera glides through hallways like a ghost itself. Watching, hunting. There are no cheap tricks here, only the raw power of atmosphere, rhythm, and sound. The now iconic hide and clap scene isn't just a jump scare, it's a masterclass in tension. You know what's coming, you feel it closing in, but you can't look away. What makes The Conjuring unforgettable isn't just its scares, it's its sincerity. Beneath the screams lies a beating heart, a story about faith, family, and love surviving in the face of pure evil. The Perrons don't fight back because they're brave, they fight because they must. Because sometimes courage is just refusing to run, even when the dark is closing in. And when the final exorcism begins, it feels like the entire house is alive, screaming, shaking, rebelling against salvation. You can almost feel the air burn. And then, silence. But it's the kind of silence that doesn't soothe, it haunts. Even after the credits roll, the echoes stay. The clapping still rings in your ears. You'll glance at your own hallway and wonder, what if something's waiting just beyond the light, smiling because now, you believe. The Conjuring doesn't just show you horror, it makes you invite it in. 4. It Follows, 2014. After a strange encounter, a young woman is relentlessly pursued by a supernatural entity, one that never stops walking toward her. What's more terrifying than something that never runs, never hides, but never stops? It Follows begins with a sense of normalcy, a quiet suburban neighborhood. Young people drifting through their aimless days. But when Jay, a college girl, experiences a strange curse passed to her through intimacy, the calm fractures. From that moment on, something begins to follow her. It can look like anyone. It can appear anywhere. It doesn't need to hurry, because eventually, it will catch up. The brilliance of It Follows lies in its simplicity. There's no ancient spellbook, No haunted mansion. No grotesque creature snarling in the dark. The horror here is inevitable. You can walk, drive, cross oceans, but it will always find you. And that quiet, steady dread seeps into your bones long before you realize it. Director David Robert Mitchell builds fear like a slow heartbeat, stretching every frame until your nerves start to fray. Jay's world feels both familiar and alien. The pastel skies, the empty swimming pools, the decaying Detroit suburbs, all timeless, all slightly wrong. It's a dream that's too clear to be real. The camera drifts in circles. The music hums like a dying signal. And you feel trapped inside that nightmare with her. You start scanning every background figure, wondering, is that it? Is that the thing, just walking closer? There's something deeply psychological in this curse. It's not just about fear, it's about guilt, intimacy, and the shadows that follow us after every choice we make. The monster becomes a mirror, taking the form of strangers, lovers, even loved ones. You realize that the film isn't only about being chased, it's about the weight of what we carry when we try to outrun the past. And yet, for all its doom, It Follows is hypnotic. The synth-driven score pulses like a heartbeat, and every scene feels soaked in tension. You're always one step ahead, glancing over your shoulder, waiting for the next shape to emerge from the crowd. The film doesn't scream for attention, it stalks you, quietly, patiently. By the time the ending arrives, you're left unsure whether Jay has escaped or simply delayed the inevitable. And maybe that's the point. Because evil, in It Follows, isn't explosive, it's enduring. It's the whisper that keeps you awake, the chill in your spine when someone walks behind you at night. You might turn off the lights thinking it's over, but just wait. Tomorrow, when you're walking alone, and you notice someone a little too far behind, moving a little too steadily, you'll remember this film. And you'll start to walk a little faster. 5. The Babadook, 2014. A grieving mother and her troubled son are haunted by a sinister figure from a mysterious children's book, and by the darkness within themselves. Grief is the kind of monster that doesn't need claws. It doesn't scream. It just waits, quietly feeding on silence, on exhaustion, on love turned sour. The Babadook understands that better than any horror film of its time. It begins not with a jump scare, but with a woman, Amelia, drowning in the slow ache of loss. Her husband is gone, her son Samuel is difficult, and her house feels like a tomb dressed as a home. Then, one night, they find a strange book, Mr. Babadook. Its pages rhyme with dread, its drawings twist with cruelty, and once you've read it, he won't leave. At first, it seems absurd, a storybook demon haunting the shadows. But that's the brilliance of it. The terror doesn't come from the monster itself, it comes from watching Amelia break apart. Piece by piece, you can feel her sleeplessness, her resentment, the weight of being a mother who can no longer cope. Every whisper in the dark feels like a thought she's been too afraid to say out loud. And that's when the line between reality and madness begins to blur. Director Jennifer Kent doesn't just give us horror, she gives us empathy wrapped in dread. The house itself becomes a reflection of Amelia's mind, dim, cluttered, and collapsing under pressure. The lighting flickers like a dying heartbeat. The shadows stretch longer than they should. And somewhere between the ticking clock and Samuel's cries, you realize you're no longer sure what's real. The Babadook isn't just coming for them, it's coming from them. The creature's presence is unforgettable. That scratching sound in the walls, the whisper of Ba-Ba-Dook, echoing like a lullaby from hell. It's less a monster and more a manifestation of trauma. The more Amelia denies it, the stronger it becomes, and when it finally takes shape, pale face, long fingers, top hat slicing through the dark, it's not just frightening, it's inevitable. But the Babadook doesn't end in despair. Its final act transforms terror into something almost beautiful, a confrontation. Not an exorcism. Amelia doesn't destroy the monster, she accepts it. She locks it in the basement, feeds it, keeps it where it belongs. Because that's what grief is. You don't banish it, you learn to live with it. When the credits roll, you're left uneasy, but also strangely moved. The Babadook isn't gone, and neither is the pain. But now, there's control, there's understanding. It's the kind of horror that doesn't just haunt your dreams, it makes you look inward. to the monsters we all keep buried. And somewhere, deep down, you start to wonder, what would your Babadook look like? 6. A Quiet Place, 2018. In a world overrun by creatures that hunt through sound, one family must live in complete silence or die. What would you say if a single whisper could kill you? A Quiet Place traps you in a world where silence isn't just golden, it's survival. From the opening scene, the film grips your breath and refuses to let go. The Abbotts, Lee, Evelyn, and their children, move through a desolate landscape barefoot. Their lives dictated by quiet. There's no talking, no laughter, no music, only the trembling hum of existence. Always on the edge of terror. Every step, every breath, could summon death. John Krasinski's direction turns silence into sound. The absence of dialogue becomes deafening. And you start to hear everything: the crunch of sand, the rustle of leaves, the thud of a heartbeat. You realize that noise, the very thing we take for granted, has become the enemy. And that's where the film's genius lies. It doesn't just make you watch fear. It makes you feel it. Physically, you hold your breath with them, praying nothing makes a sound. The monsters themselves are almost secondary to the story. They are blind, predatory, drawn to the faintest noise. But the true power of A Quiet Place comes from what it says about family, loss, and love in the face of constant danger. Lee's desperation to protect his children. Evelyn's quiet courage as she prepares to give birth in a world where a baby's cry could bring death. It's the kind of horror that makes your heart ache as much as it races. There's a moment, one of the most unbearable in modern horror, when Evelyn goes into labor alone. Hiding in a bathtub as a creature stalks through the house. She can't scream, she can't move. The tension is so sharp it hurts to watch. That's not just fear, it's empathy. Because A Quiet Place isn't about monsters outside the walls, it's about the fear of failing those you love. Every frame feels deliberate, every silence sacred. The use of sound design is nothing short of masterful. Moments of stillness feel alive, while a dropped lantern or creaking floorboard lands like a gunshot. Even the film's rare bursts of sound hit you like violence, shocking in their suddenness. By the time the story reaches its heartbreaking climax, the silence has become unbearable. Lee's sacrifice, Evelyn's scream, finally unleashed, aren't just moments of survival, but release. It's a reminder that love, even in its quietest form, can be louder than fear. And when the final shot comes, a mother reloading a shotgun, ready to protect her children, you realize that silence was never weakness. It was strength, controlled, focused, deadly. The monsters may have hunted by sound, but in the end, the quiet became humanity's sharpest weapon. After it ends, you'll find yourself listening to the world differently. The hum of the fridge, the creak of your floorboards, even your own breathing, it all feels louder now. Because A Quiet Place teaches you something terrifyingly simple. Sometimes the scariest sound is your own voice breaking the silence. 7. Paranormal Activity, 2007. A young couple sets up cameras around their home to capture what's haunting them, only to discover that some things should never be seen. It starts with something small, a door that moves on its own, a whisper in the night, a sound too soft to be real. Paranormal Activity doesn't throw monsters in your face. It doesn't need to. It creeps under your skin slowly, almost politely, until you realize it's already inside your house. And by then, it's too late. Katie and Micah are just like any couple. They laugh, tease, and argue in their new suburban home. But when Katie reveals she's been haunted since childhood, Micah decides to take matters into his own hands. He buys a camera. He wants proof, evidence, the truth. What he captures instead is a slow descent into madness. The more he records, the more the entity reacts, as if the act of watching gives it power. The genius of Paranormal Activity lies in its simplicity. No elaborate effects, no orchestral score, just a single camera watching ordinary people sleep. And yet, that simplicity becomes the source of pure dread. You find yourself staring at an empty doorway, waiting for something, anything, to move. When it finally does, your heart stops. Because the fear isn't just in what you see, it's in what you don't. Every night in the film feels like a gamble. The timestamps tick by in eerie silence. And the tension builds so slowly you almost forget to breathe. A soft thud, a shadow, the sheets move, then, stillness. The terror comes from the familiarity of it all. This isn't a haunted castle or an abandoned asylum, it's a normal bedroom. Yours could look just like it. As Mika's obsession deepens, his arrogance feeds the darkness. He provokes it, mocks it, until the line between curiosity and curse disappears. Katie changes too, her voice softer, her eyes emptier, her body no longer fully hers. By the time she stands motionless beside the bed for hours, just watching him sleep, the horror feels disturbingly intimate. It's not the supernatural that terrifies you, it's how helpless love becomes against something it can't understand. And that ending, those final seconds, are burned into horror history. A scream, heavy footsteps, a sudden silence, then, the sound of something being dragged away. The screen goes black, but your imagination doesn't. You find yourself glancing into the corners of your room, wondering if the dark might look back. Paranormal Activity changed horror forever by proving you don't need big budgets or bloody violence to create fear, you just need truth. The kind of fear that hides in the everyday. The kind that waits for you in the quiet, in the dark, when the world has gone still and your house starts to breathe. Because deep down, you know what this movie whispers. The camera may stop rolling, but the haunting never really ends. 8. The Witch, 2015, in 1630s New England. A family banished from their colony faces isolation, paranoia, and a darkness that seeps from the woods and from within. The witch doesn't jump out at you. It doesn't scream, or chase, or drown you in gore. Instead, it whispers, slowly, patiently, like something ancient calling from the trees. From the first frame, you feel it, the unease, the silence, the sense that this story isn't about witches at all, but about faith, guilt, and the slow decay of sanity. The film follows a devout Puritan family, William, Catherine, and their 5 children, cast out from their settlement to live alone at the edge of a vast, hungry forest. They believe their faith will protect them. But faith, in this world, is brittle, and when their newborn son vanishes without a sound, that belief begins to crack like old wood. What's terrifying here isn't the supernatural, it's the quiet unraveling of a family's mind. The forest becomes a mirror for their fears, reflecting back their sins, their shame, their desperation for control. Thomason, the eldest daughter, becomes the scapegoat. Her mother suspects her, her father doubts her, the twins mock her, and when the family goat, Black Phillip, starts whispering promises in the dark, you can feel the line between madness and truth blur beyond repair. Robert Eggers' direction feels almost ritualistic. Every frame looks like a painting, every sound deliberate. You hear the creak of wood, the moan of wind, the murmur of prayer. There's no soundtrack guiding your emotions, just the sound of dread growing in your chest. The Old English dialogue, the stark lighting, the cold landscape, it all builds a sense of authenticity so powerful you forget you're watching fiction. But what makes The Witch truly haunting is its ambiguity. Is there really a witch in the woods? Or is the evil entirely human? When Catherine begins to see her dead children, when William confesses his pride through sobs, when Thomason stands alone, blood on her hands and tears on her face, you realize that the horror doesn't come from outside. It comes from belief itself. Then comes the ending, that final moment that feels less like a climax and more like surrender. Thomason, broken and alone, steps into the forest, following Black Phillip's voice. "Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?" he whispers. It's not just temptation, it's liberation. After all the pain, the repression, the guilt, she chooses freedom, terrible, beautiful freedom, and as she floats into the night sky, her laughter echoing through the trees, it's hard to know what you feel. Is it fear? Or relief? That's the power of The Witch. It doesn't scare you with what it shows. It haunts you with what it suggests. It lingers, like an old curse you can't quite shake, reminding you that evil isn't always a thing hiding in the dark. Sometimes, it's faith itself, demanding, consuming, and waiting for you to break. And when the screen finally fades to black, the forest feels closer, the silence heavier. You might even hear a whisper, not from outside, but from within, asking the same question Black Phillip did. Would you, too, like to live deliciously? 9. 2017, in the quiet town of Derry. Children vanish one by one. Their bodies never found, only their fear remains. And at the heart of that fear waits something ancient, something hungry. Pennywise the Dancing Clown. It isn't just a story about a monster, it's about childhood itself. And the terror of realizing the world isn't safe anymore. From the very first scene, when little Georgie runs into the rain with his paper boat, we're reminded of innocence, fragile, fleeting, doomed to be devoured. The gutter becomes a mouth, and the clown within it a smiling nightmare. That moment sets the tone for everything to come, bright colors masking bottomless darkness. The film follows the Losers Club, a group of kids bound not by friendship at first, but by shared pain. Each one carries a scar, grief, trauma, abuse, loneliness, and Pennywise knows it. He doesn't just feed on flesh, he feeds on fear, twisting their deepest insecurities into waking horrors. But the brilliance of it lies in how those same fears bind them together. Because while Pennywise is terrifying, he's powerless when faced with unity. There's something magnetic about Bill Skarsgård's performance. His Pennywise doesn't need to chase, he lures. His smile stretches too wide. His voice lilts like a lullaby gone wrong. He moves like a puppet whose strings are being pulled by something unseen. Something older than human nightmares. You can't look away because he's the kind of evil that feels playful, curious, and utterly indifferent to suffering. That's what makes him unforgettable. But beneath the supernatural horror lies something even more chilling. The adults. The ones who see the blood but pretend it isn't there. Who ignore the screams. Who've grown so numb they no longer see the evil right in front of them. Derry is a town poisoned by silence. And Pennywise thrives in that silence. The real monster, perhaps, is neglect. The kind that lets darkness grow unchecked. And yet, amid all the terror, there's light. The bond between the Losers Club feels raw and real. They fight, they laugh, they bleed, but they never stop believing in each other. When they descend into the sewers for the final confrontation, it's not just about killing a clown. It's about reclaiming power, facing trauma, and refusing to let fear define them. The ending isn't triumph. Exactly, it's survival. Pennywise is gone. For now, but the scars remain. The kids know it, and so do we. Because it isn't about the monster you defeat, it's about the fear you carry forward. The one that grows with you, waiting to resurface when you least expect it. And as the credits roll, that unsettling truth lingers. Maybe we all have our own version of Derry. Our own Pennywise hiding in the cracks of memory. The real question is, if you heard that soft, cheerful voice whispering from the dark, "Hiya, Georgie, would you run, or would you look?" 10. The Others, 2001, in a lonely mansion shrouded by fog. A mother and her children live in constant darkness, terrified not of what's outside, but of what might be inside. There's something about silence that makes your skin crawl. In The Others, that silence becomes its own character, heavy, suffocating, alive. Grace, played with haunting fragility by Nicole Kidman, lives with her 2 children in a vast, shadow-drenched house after World War II. The children suffer from a rare condition: they cannot be exposed to sunlight. Curtains must always be drawn. Doors must never be opened without closing another first. It's a world ruled by rules. And yet, something in that house doesn't obey them. At first, Grace seems in control, a strict mother clinging to faith in order to keep the chaos of the outside world away. But soon, the whispers start, footsteps echo in empty rooms. Doors slam when no one's near them. Her daughter, Anne, speaks of others, figures who walk the halls unseen, who whisper her name, who claim the house as theirs. And as Grace's grip on reason begins to slip, you start to wonder, are the ghosts tormenting her? Or is she the ghost haunting them? What makes The Others extraordinary isn't just its mystery, it's the way it builds fear through restraint. There's no blood, no cheap jump scares, no monstrous faces leaping from the dark. Instead, director Alejandro Amenabar crafts dread like a symphony, quiet notes of unease rising toward a revelation that shatters everything you thought you understood. Every frame feels colder, every breath shorter. You're not just watching Grace lose her sanity, you're sinking into it with her. Kidman's performance is a masterclass in controlled terror. Her eyes dart, her voice trembles between conviction and denial. You can feel her unraveling, her faith, her identity, her very understanding of reality. And when the truth comes, it doesn't scream, it whispers. Softly, cruelly, like the house itself has been waiting to confess. Because The Others isn't a ghost story in the traditional sense. It's a story about grief, denial, and the human soul's desperate refusal to let go. That final twist, when Grace finally learns who the others truly are, is one of the most chilling revelations in modern horror. It forces you to question every scene before it, every flicker of light, every whispered word. Suddenly, the haunting makes perfect sense, and yet it feels even more tragic. Because the true horror isn't death, it's the eternity that follows. Trapped in memory, unable to move on. When the fog swallows the house once more and the whispers fade, you realize the fear has shifted. It's no longer about ghosts in the dark. It's about being forgotten, about existing forever in a world that's already moved on. And that, perhaps, is the most terrifying fate of all. So when you next find yourself in a quiet house, with curtains drawn and the air too still, ask yourself, are you really alone? Or are the others simply watching, waiting, unseen, in the dark? And that's the thing about modern horror, it doesn't just make you scream. It makes you feel. These stories don't leave when the credits roll, they stay. Lurking in the quiet corners of your mind, whispering when the lights go out. Maybe that's what real fear is, not monsters or ghosts, but the truths we try not to face. If you felt that chill, if these tales stirred something dark and curious within you, don't let it fade. Like, share, and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. The shadows have more stories to tell.